Our story begins inside a dark house where a woman screams in agony while going through labor. The mother believes she is dying of cancer, but she is actually experiencing intense labor pains. Soon after, she gives birth to a baby girl alone in her bedroom without any medical assistance. She views the arrival of the child as a divine test sent from above to challenge her faith. In a moment of desperation, the mother considers killing the newborn with a pair of large scissors. However, she decides to spare the infant and embraces her, a choice that seals their shared fate. Years later, a teenage Carrie White stands isolated at the edge of the school swimming pool. The gym teacher, Miss Desjardins, orders the students into the pool to begin their class for the day. During the game, Carrie is hit by a volleyball and fails to participate effectively with her classmates. Chris and the other girls mock her awkward behavior, further distancing the girl from the rest of the group. While showering later, she discovers blood on her hands and the floor, marking her first period. Terrified by the sight of the blood, she screams for help from the other girls in the locker room. But they relentlessly bully her instead by throwing feminine hygiene products while she cowered in the shower. Chris records the humiliation on a smartphone while the group chants at the distraught girl. Miss Desjardins enters the shower room to stop the bullying and tries to comfort the panicking student. The teacher slaps Carrie to snap her out of her intense panic. It becomes clear that the girl has no understanding of her own biological processes. So the teacher orders the other students to leave the room immediately. Then she comforts Carrie and explains that menstruation is a normal part of growing up. Following this talk, Miss Desjardins apologizes to her for the physical slap during the crisis. In the privacy of the office, she explains the biological nature of a period to Carrie. Principal Henry joins them and asks the girl to identify the specific students who bullied her in the shower. Since Carrie remains silent, Miss Desjardins steps in to identify Chris Hargensen as the primary instigator of the attack. She then insists to the principal that the group must be punished for their cruel actions. But Henry shifts focus and informs Carrie that the school is required to contact her mother about the incident. The girl's intense distress causes a water cooler to suddenly explode, an outburst of energy that signals a shift in her reality. Following the explosion, she quickly leaves the office and walks alone through the quiet school hallway. Soon after, Margaret White arrives at the school in her car to pick up her daughter. Meanwhile, Chris shows the recorded video of the shower incident to her laughing friends. The group of students continues to mock the humiliation of Carrie while watching the footage on a phone. During the drive home, Carrie tries to talk to Margaret about what happened at school, but her mother remains cold. When a local boy mocks her from the sidewalk, she uses her mind to knock him off his bike. Back at the house, she finds Margaret hitting her head against a wall in a frantic state of prayer. Her mother then speaks about the original sin of Eve and the supposed curse of blood that has fallen upon her. She continues to pray for her daughter's soul despite the girl crying out in protest. Suddenly, Margaret grabs her and begins to drag her across the room toward a dark corner. Carrie begs her mother not to lock her away, but her pleas for mercy go completely ignored. The woman forces her daughter into a small prayer closet and firmly locks the door from the outside. Alone in the dark, she screams and desperately bangs on the door to be let out. The wooden door begins to crack, suggesting a power that might soon be impossible to contain. Trapped in the closet, Carrie stares at religious icons and cries as she waits for her mother to return. Elsewhere, Sue tells Tommy that she feels terrible about the way everyone treated the girl. She expresses deep guilt over the incident in the shower. Following this, she explains that she was also involved in the bullying. Tommy listens patiently and shares a story from his own past to help comfort her. Meanwhile, Chris and Billy arrive at a house in a red car while drinking. The friends laugh while watching a video of Carrie on a laptop. But the joke goes further when Chris uploads the footage to the internet for everyone to see. Later that night, Margaret finally opens the closet door and finds her daughter inside. The two share a brief moment of affection as the tension between them temporarily fades. Back at school, Miss Desjardins gathers the girls to talk about the upcoming prom. She immediately confronts Chris about her role in the recent bullying. As punishment, the teacher orders the entire group to run drills. She warns that anyone who quits will be banned from attending the prom. The next day, Margaret drops her daughter off and tells her to be careful. During the drills, Chris refuses to run, so Miss Desjardins officially bans her from the dance. Infuriated, she tries to lead the other girls in a protest against the teacher. However, Sue ignores the plea and continues with the punishment. While walking through the halls, Carrie discovers a cruel message painted on her locker. The constant harassment becomes too much, and she suffers an intense moment of distress in the bathroom. During this breakdown, the bathroom mirror suddenly shatters, an event that feels heavier than expected. Confused by the incident, she goes to the library to research telekinesis on a computer. Another student stops to assist her with the technology while she watches a video on the subject. Soon after, she tests her focus and causes a flag outside to wave violently. The next day in class, the teacher calls on her to present a poem. Mr. Ullman asks her to come to the front so she can share the work with everyone. She begins reading a dark and intense passage from her book as the classroom falls silent. However, the teacher calls the reading disturbing and asks if she is done scaring the other students. Tommy Ross defends her by calling the poem awesome after the man mocks her. Meanwhile, Mrs. Snell enters the dry cleaners to pick up her clothes and finds Margaret working. She apologizes to the woman for the behavior her daughter showed toward Carrie at school. As they discuss the godless times, Margaret pricks her own chest with a safety pin. Later, Chris and her father meet with the principal to protest the ban on the dance. But Miss Desjardins reveals that the girl filmed the shower incident and likely still has the video. She refuses to give the phone to her father, claiming his request is an invasion of privacy. Then she storms out of the office and heads to the gym to find her friends. She informs the group that she is officially banned from attending the prom. But Sue tells her they deserved the punishment for what they did to Carrie White. The girl mocks her in return for being obsessed with having a perfect night with Tommy. Following the argument, Sue looks at her red dress while feeling deeply conflicted and guilty. Later that night, Carrie sits on her bed to study books about miracles and telekinesis. She focuses her mind on the pages, and a book begins to levitate in the air. But the noises from her room alert Margaret, who grabs a large knife from the kitchen. Hearing her mother approach the door, the girl frantically tries to hide her floating books. Margaret enters and finds her daughter in bed, telling the girl she is safe there for now. The next day, Sue asks Tommy to take Carrie to the prom instead of her. He is shocked by the request and asks if she is actually being serious about this. She explains that she wants to give up her own night so the other girl can attend. Because his girlfriend believes it is the right thing to do, Tommy eventually agrees to the plan. Soon after, he walks through the school hallway and spots Carrie sitting alone in the cafeteria. He approaches her and attempts to start a conversation about the book she is reading. The boy then asks her if she would like to be his date for the upcoming prom. She reacts with deep suspicion when she notices other students watching and laughing at her. The girl abruptly leaves the room, but he follows her into the hallway to explain. While he tries to convince her the invitation is sincere, she flees from him in tears. Following the encounter, Miss Desjardins finds her crying in the locker room and offers comfort. Carrie reveals the surprising news that Tommy Ross invited her to be his date. She shares her fear that it is just a cruel trick, but the teacher offers her reassurance. Then the woman leads her to a mirror and tells her she is a beautiful young lady. Miss Desjardins offers Carrie advice on how to prepare her appearance for the prom night. Soon after, she confronts Sue Snell, who clarifies that the invitation is not a prank. Then Tommy defends his choice to ask Carrie, comparing it to charitable acts by famous athletes. He admits that she declined his offer, and the teacher warns him about potential social ridicule. However, Sue and Tommy walk away after she states they do not care about appearances. Tommy later arrives at the house of Carrie and asks her once more to go to the prom. He eventually convinces her that his interest is genuine by discussing the book she was reading. As a result, she finally agrees to go with him and sets a curfew for the night. While walking in town later, the girl stops to admire a dress displayed in a shop window. She enters the store and looks closely at a red prom dress on a mannequin. Just then, Chris Hargensen spots her inside the shop and watches with a suspicious expression. But the moment ends when Margaret finds her daughter outside and brings her back into the house. The mother accuses her of being immodest and demands to know where she has been. In response, Carrie informs her that she has been invited to the prom by a boy. Margaret reacts with immediate horror and disapproval to the news of the invitation. Regardless, her daughter insists that she wants to try and live a normal life as a whole person. The woman warns her about the predatory nature of boys and forbids her from going. She adds that boys will be attracted to her now that she has begun her period. Following this, she orders Carrie to the prayer closet to seek forgiveness for her sins. But the girl uses her telekinetic powers to throw Margaret across the room, changing their relationship forever. Carrie explains to Margaret that her powers are a natural inheritance rather than a work of the devil. Meanwhile, Chris and Billy arrive at a farm at night, searching for something specific. When Jackie is unable to finish the task, Billy uses a sledgehammer to kill a pig. Then Chris uses a knife to slit the animal's throat and collect its blood in a bucket. Back at school, Sue Snell watches the prom preparations while weighing the cost of her past choices. She soon runs into the bathroom and hides in a stall, overcome by her emotions. That night, Chris and Billy sneak into the gym carrying the bucket of blood. They rig the container in the rafters above the stage, setting a trap that remains hidden for now. As the night begins, Sue looks at her dress and starts to reconsider staying home. While at her house, Carrie looks at her own finished gown with a rare sense of pride. She applies lipstick and gets ready for the arrival of her date. But her mother enters the room and immediately calls the dress immodest and sinful. Margaret insists they burn the garment and pray for forgiveness, but the dynamic has shifted. The woman slaps her repeatedly until Carrie uses her mind to freeze her mother's hand in midair. Following this, she looks out the window to see a limousine arriving for the evening. Tommy Ross steps out and walks toward the front door. Carrie says goodbye through the closet door and promises she will be home early. Once they are together, Tommy tells her she looks beautiful. As they sit in the car, she expresses her deep anxiety about attending the dance. He then places a corsage on her wrist as they head toward the school. Tommy and Carrie make their entrance into the decorated prom venue together. Soon after, Miss Desjardins approaches her to compliment her appearance and offer encouragement. Meanwhile, Sue receives a reassuring text message from Tommy about how the evening is going. As a slow song begins to play, he invites her to the dance floor. While they move among the other students, he begins to teach her how to dance. However, she still questions his true motives for inviting her to the dance in the first place. Back at the house, a bloody Margaret attempts to claw her way out of the locked closet. She reaches through a hole in the door to manipulate the lock from the inside. Just then, Chris and Billy sneak into the school building unnoticed. The announcer calls for everyone to take their seats for the crowning ceremony. Above the stage, the pair prepares a bucket of blood, though its purpose remains a mystery for now. As students cast their votes, the atmosphere in the room begins to shift. Tommy and Carrie decide to participate by voting for themselves on the prom ballot. While at home, Sue Snell receives a threatening text message from Chris. The message reveals a level of malice that Sue did not expect to see tonight. She rushes out of her house in a panic after realizing the danger. In the rafters, Billy warns Chris of the consequences if they are caught in the act. Following this, Sue arrives at the school and runs inside to stop the prank. The announcer declares Tommy and Carrie as the prom king and queen. She smiles as the pair walks through the cheering crowd toward the stage. The pair ascends the stage while above them, Chris and Billy prepare to release the blood. But Miss Desjardins intercepts Sue and forcibly removes her, a move that will have devastating consequences. Just then, Chris pulls the rope, drenching Carrie in pig blood in a moment of pure cruelty. Soon after, the humiliating shower video is projected for everyone to see, shattering her remaining dignity. The metal bucket falls, striking Tommy on the head. She kneels over his body and realizes he is dead, marking the end of her restraint. Carrie unleashes a massive telekinetic shockwave, throwing students across the room in a desperate release of pain. Then she uses her mind to slam the gym doors shut, trapping the entire school inside her nightmare. Following this, the girl causes stage lights to explode and sets the curtains ablaze, sealing their fate. She uses electrical wires to electrocute those trying to flee, turning their escape route into a trap. The building is engulfed in flames as she walks away from the carnage she has created. Meanwhile, Chris and Billy argue about their next move while driving away from the school. They decide to flee town to avoid the fallout of their actions. Carrie stands alone in the street as they drive toward her. The girl splits the road with her mind, creating a physical divide between her and her tormentors. Chris urges Billy to run her over, but her power is far greater than they realize. She stops the car telekinetically, causing a violent crash that sends the vehicle spinning. Chris finds her partner dead and sees the bloodied girl standing before her. The driver tries to hit her again, but Carrie stops the car once more. Then she lifts the vehicle and slams it into the station, ending the chase once and for all. The car slams into the gas pumps, causing fuel to pour out onto the pavement. Inside the wreckage, Chris succumbs to her injuries and dies before she can escape. A massive explosion consumes the station as Carrie walks away from the fire and heads home. Meanwhile, Sue Snell surveys the total destruction at the prom, witnessing the cost of the night's events. Carrie enters her darkened house and calls out for Margaret, seeking the comfort of her mother. She begins to wash the layers of blood off her body in the tub to cleanse herself of the massacre. The two women eventually find each other and share a desperate embrace in the hallway. As they hold one another, Margaret recounts the dark details of the night her daughter was conceived. They kneel together to pray, but the religious devotion masks a much more violent intent. Suddenly, Margaret draws a knife and stabs her daughter in the back. The girl tumbles down the stairs as her mother continues the brutal assault. Margaret descends after her, claiming that the devil must be killed repeatedly to be truly gone. The pair struggle on the floor as the girl fights to defend her life against the woman she loved. Using her mind, Carrie stops the blade mid-air before her mother can strike again. She then launches a barrage of sharp kitchen tools across the room with lethal precision. The force of the attack pins Margaret to the wall as the various blades find their mark. Carrie approaches her mother, who hangs trapped against the door by the sharp metal objects. In a tragic turn, she tries to comfort the dying woman she was forced to strike down. The two share a final tearful embrace while they both bleed from their catastrophic wounds. The girl sobs as Margaret dies, realizing that her search for acceptance has ended in total isolation. During their final embrace, Margaret suddenly stabs her daughter in the back with a hidden knife. The girl reacts instantly, telekinetically driving several blades deep into the woman's chest. As Margaret falls to the floor and dies, she tries one last time to offer comfort. Soon after, Sue Snell enters the wreckage and discovers her sitting beside the body. But the grieving girl blames her for the tragedy and uses her powers to threaten her. She begins to levitate the body while the entire house starts to shake and fall apart. The walls and ceiling crumble under the weight of the immense telekinetic energy. In a final act of mercy, she throws Sue out of the house just before the structure is destroyed. The White family home completely collapses, vanishing into a massive crater in the ground. Later, Sue visits the grave and finds the headstone defaced with hateful messages. Following this discovery, she places a single white rose on the vandalized site. The scene shifts to a hospital bed where she is seen screaming during a difficult labor. Suddenly, a bloody hand bursts through her stomach in a moment of pure terror. But she wakes up screaming in her own bed, realizing the nightmare is far from over.